it's CMB. Now I want to talk about what I think is the best Spider-Man cartoon. Now, as I mentioned, last time I talked about what I think was a decent Spider-Man cartoon, but I think it's kind of overrated. Still a good show if that's your favorite one. But mainly, I feel like there's a Spider-Man cartoon out there that did better than that show did. I feel like both shows were great Spider-Man cartoons, but there was just one Spidey cartoon I think did it a lot better. Plus, there was a lot more to watch. There was more screen time of it. And I'm talking about Spider-Man the Animated Series. Now, Spider-Man the Animated Series, this show ran for 5 seasons, had 65 episodes, and had a gigantic amount of villains. There's a lot to cover here, so I'll cover it the same way I did with the last one. Starting with the intro. Now, with the intro here, nothing tops this intro. This intro is just unbeatable. It's, without a doubt, probably my favorite Spider-Man theme out of anything. That it tops the movies, it tops any of the other shows, anything I've heard in the past. Like, this is the Spider-Man theme. Like, it has a good riff of the guitars in it, and it has this kind of neon voice to it, but it works very well. Plus, how the point I made about with Spectacular, it had an issue with just having clips that don't fit what you're seeing in the intro, while with the Spider-Man the Animated Series, this series, you're getting a lot of clips of action. You're really seeing what this show has to offer. Plus, like I've also mentioned, this clip just has mainly clips of Spider-Man. So the problem with the previous intro is that there was a bunch of Peter Parker clips. Mainly, it should just stick with the beginning part of the intro, and that is it. And Spectacular fails on that. Well, with the animated series here, you only see the clip of Peter Parker in the beginning, while it mainly focuses on all the action Spider-Man has to offer, because when you watch a Spider-Man intro, what you want to see is Spider-Man. You want to see what villains, you want to see action, you want to see what this show has to offer. I feel like the intro is just awesome here. Definitely takes the top spot for best intro. Now, moving on to the next part I want to talk about is the art style is super comic book accurate. It is super comic book accurate. These designs you are seeing, it is so accurate to the comics, it's almost unbelievable. Like, take Spider-Man's suit, for example. Has the classic red and blue getup, the classic suit. Plus, one detail on the suit I noticed that is actually a perfect resemblance of the comic design is if you look at the logo right there, there is a little square showing the logo. Instead of like covering with more lines, it actually has a square right there. Now, it personally bothered me at first until I noticed that that's what the show was going with. It actually took the old design from the 60s and put it there. That is just amazing right there. The fact how they implemented one of the oldest Spidey logo designs and they put it here just feels unbelievably cool. Plus, other designs I feel like that just perfectly shows the comics. I could just name a bunch of examples, like Kingpin, Scorpion, Dr. Octopus, the Green Goblin, Venom, Carnage, the list goes on. All these designs, just look at all these designs here with their comic book resemblance. You can see they took the designs, made minor tweaks and changes, but made it look really cool. Plus the voices, the lines, the actors doing the voices, they fit perfectly. Seriously, all these designs and characters just look amazing. Examples of characters I think that were better here, like the characters I had problems with in the previous Spider-Man cartoon. Green Goblin is perfect in this series. He has a design that looks exactly like the comics. He has this kind of high voice, but it actually sounds like a legit goblin. Then you go on to the other one with Venom. Venom actually sounds like a deep voice, and his weird red and blue design glowing actually gives a really good sense of color to it, because you kind of see those kind of lighting colors when you read it in the comics. And the Shocker is so much better here. The design, it's like ripped straight out of the comic books. Plus he has this kind of intimidating voice. That right there is Shocker.
Okay, this is the real me. Not this. This. Not this. Winner, loser.
This is the Shocker, man. And I just feel like out of all these designs, they just fixed it. A lot of the problems that were in Spectacular, I feel like this series did it a lot better. Just so much better. Plus, the main character I had an issue with in Spectacular, Kraven the Hunter, he is so much better here. they take the classic design, and I feel like they made it even better. They actually gave him black pants instead of brown ones, kind of to make it different and more intimidating with its creepy art style. I feel like they really took Kraven and they just kind of made him look even cooler in this series. These design changes and designs look almost exactly like the comics, or in some cases, I would say almost just as good or even better. I feel like they just took these designs and they just made them perfect. Plus, they even used villains of Spider-Man you have probably never heard of, like the Spot, Hydro Man, and the Chameleon. Now, you've probably seen the Chameleon in some iterations, but he is not a very common Spider-Man villain. Reason why I think this is my favorite version of Chameleon is because he's not exactly like what the comics did with wearing fake masks. Now, sure, Spectacular did that better, but I feel like this version of Chameleon is more smarter and secretive. Because this version of Chameleon actually never talks with his normal voice. He only talks the voice he's imitating of. And plus, he's not like switching into costumes. He actually has like a shape-shifting belt, so he can shapeshift into anyone he sees, which makes this version of Chameleon a lot smarter and strategic, and he can switch between people so quickly that it would be hard to catch this guy, like super hard to catch him. But yeah, in other words, this show had perfect art styles to all these characters. I just think they're amazing. Some of them I thought were improvements over the comics because some comic designs looked kind of weird. They made them look even better here. I feel like these are just the definitive or just amazing designs for the characters. Now, to continue where I last left off, I want to talk about the villains. Now, there was a great handful of villains in the other Spider-Man cartoon, but I want to talk about 20 villains that didn't make an appearance in Spectacular Spider-Man, starting with Alistair Smythe, Big Wheel, Carnage, Herbert Landon, the Hobgoblin, Hydro Man, Kingpin, Morbius, Rocket Racer, Scorpion, the Spot, the Spider Slayer, the Prowler, the Owl, the Sentinels, Deacon Frost, Black Widow, Miriam, the Mega Slayer, and the Triantula. This gigantic rogues gallery of villains. It's amazing. The biggest rogues gallery of villains in any Spider-Man cartoon. I would even say it tops the 60s cartoon, which lasted a really long time with a gigantic amount of villains. But I feel like these are the best versions of Spider-Man villains in any media when it comes to video games, movies, and cartoons. These are the top Spider-Man villains. The Rogues Gallery is just so big here. It's unbelievable, and it's amazing what they managed to do, and a lot of them, I think they work perfectly. Now, sure, there is a small handful of villains I actually didn't like this version of, but like at least 95% of these villains, I just love them. They were amazing. Way better than any of the other versions I have seen. But yeah, I can definitely say these are really well done versions of the villains, and I think this show definitely deserves more attention because it did a lot from what it had. Plus, there's even more from what it did. Next thing I want to talk about is that this show has amazing crossovers. There are so many great crossovers you see in this show. I mean, Spider-Man crosses over with Iron Man, Captain America, Doctor Strange, Daredevil, the Fantastic Four, Blade, and he even crosses paths with the Punisher. There are so many great Marvel villain cameos you see in this series. Yeah, it's amazing. There are so many great crossovers here. What does Spectacular have? None. There are no crossovers in this show. Well, this series had a gigantic amount of crossovers of other different Marvel characters and properties. Some people even consider that this was the MCU before we had the movie series we have now. Now, final point I want to make is that this is the best version of Spider-Man besides the comics. Mainly because I think he's the most intelligent version of all the Spider-Mans. Now, if you compare the predicaments that Spectacular Spider-Man and this version of Spider-Man gets into, you can tell that a lot of Spectacular's escapes just involve him grabbing something with his webs and just pulling away. Unlike with this series, he gets out in a lot of different ways. Kind of like how he gets stuck in a water tower, kind of like in the comics, and he finds the way to escape because he can't climb up, so he has to find a way to jump out. A lot of the things he gets into, it's amazing how he escapes these predicaments. I feel like it really puts you on your toes when they cut to commercial break. I feel like this show really did it well to show how intelligent this version of Spider-Man is, and he doesn't make dumb mistakes like other Spider-Mans do, because the mistakes he makes are relatable, like losing track of time or making promises you can't keep. I feel like this show really captured what it is for Spider-Man and who Spider-Man really is. Now, sure, other iterations did it very well. I feel like this show did it best because this show had 65 episodes, a giant amount of entertainment to watch. I feel like just the animation, the intro, the designs for characters, the characterization I thought was great. There are some minor changes and tweaks, but I feel like everything this show did with its crossovers, all these different villains, I feel like this show deserves to be considered the best Spider-Man cartoon. If you ask me, it's the best because I rewatched both of them recently, and I could definitely say the animated series is way better than Spectacular. Spectacular is great, but it does not compare to the animated series. The animated series did a lot more with what it got, had way more villains, it had crossovers. I feel like the animation was better, and it doesn't repeat the same punching sound effect. It was creative with what it did. Sure, there are some weird moments in the series, and some disturbing ones as well, but the fact is this show wasn't scared to do these creepy things. Even though this show had a bunch of censors in it, I don't feel like it's very noticeable. I feel like it still works. Like, they never say kill, they just say they'll destroy Spider-Man, or instead of Sinister Six, it's the Insidious Six. And the fact that some people have pointed out that Spider-Man rarely throws a punch in the series, throws a bunch of kicks and shoots webs, but I feel like him with his attacking abilities and what they did, the censors, if you ask me, are not even noticeable in my opinion. A lot of them aren't. I feel like the show works perfectly fine the way it was executed, and I think it deserves a lot more attention than it got. But tell me what you guys think. I know there are people out there that agree with me with this, but I don't know why it's like 80% of fans say Spectacular is a lot better. What about this show is better? Clearly this one did a lot more with what it had. I feel like, yeah, the animated series is the top Spider-Man cartoon, and it deserves to be #1 in my opinion. I definitely consider it the best Spider-Man cartoon. Nah, I would say it's the best version of Spider-Man we've ever had. That counts for all medias, except the comics. The comics is the source material, and that's always considered the best version because it's like the book. It's the source. But anyways, tell me what you guys think in the comment section. And like always, see you guys.